Just give me a moment here. I know we're going to do the second reading of Lamentations. And will it come up on the screen? Thank you. So this is the second reading, Lamentations, chapter 5, verses 20 to 21. This was the theme for the 225th General Assembly. Why have you forgotten us completely? Why have you forsaken us these many days? Restore us to yourself, O Lord, that we may be restored. Renew our days as of old. This is God's word to us.
Thanks be to God.
The Presbyterian General Assembly has a couple of goals, and I'm going to just kind of reiterate these for you so you'll know kind of the whole purpose of the General Assembly. It's to protect the church from errors in thought, so kind of checks and balances. It's to make sure that our theology stays true to the biblical standards of our history. It's a witness to truth and justice in our community and the world. It's to set priorities for the church. It establishes relationships with other churches and ecumenical bodies. It reviews the work of the synods, the collection of churches. It resolves controversies. And it's responsible for the common concern of the whole church. And it's also a symbol of unity for the Presbyterian Church USA. So with that said, I am grateful for being asked to represent the 14 churches of the Kendall Presbytery, which is Twin Falls to Eastern Idaho, at the 224th General Assembly, June 2020. I was looking forward to a 6-day holiday in Baltimore, Maryland. I envisioned getting a feel for what the larger Presbyterian church looks like, how it operates, who the people are. I wanted to meet new friends. I wanted to go to a Baltimore Orioles game. They were playing the New York Yankees. I wanted to take the train to Washington, D.C. It's only a 40-mile trip. And I wanted to explore the former tobacco shipping, pirate shipbuilding, Fort McHenry, second leading port of entry for immigrants, famous city. Worshiping in person with 700 to 900 other Presbyterians in what I heard was a powerful experience. Engaging in local community service projects in the heart of the poorest sections of a city so that I could see some of the social issues close up. I signed up to attend church service in a church most unlike ours. I was looking forward to having crab cakes and a glass of wine at a shack along the inner harbor in what I read in a Chamber of Commerce list of things to do while in Baltimore. And of course, attending the 6 days of meeting. Well, enter COVID-19 and profound change in plans. In my teaching experience, I call this Plan Q because it wasn't even remotely related to what I had initially intended. I attended a 2-day General Assembly via my phone, tablet, or personal computer on the platforms of Zoom and Biz. I sat in front of one of those devices in a split screen. Visual on one side with faces and with the words and the agenda on the other side. No, I did not have an experience of being someplace exotic with new friends in a convention hall where one feels the ambiance, the collective enthusiasm and energy, and being under the total immersion of being with many people over a long period of time for a shared mission. And yet my experience was engaging because early on I decided that in order to have a meaningful adventure, I had to study up. So I did. I went to church via YouTube with several congregations in Baltimore. I explored the vast resources of the pcusa.org, and I highly recommend that, if nothing else, you just go in there. It's really interesting. I went on rabbit hunts for ideas from those resources. I read articles. I watched the Poor People's March in Washington. I searched out YouTube interviews. I participated in the preliminary webcast. I watched the Hands and Feet YouTube of the Young People's Activity in Baltimore. And I learned from the teaching guides as General Assembly rationale, procedures, agendas were explained. And I was ready to bring this remote learning on. So what follows is kind of a short summary, a collection of random thoughts, and just general impressions fresh off the top of my head. The theme, from lament to hope. And that theme carried throughout the topics, throughout the discussions in this General Assembly. So what I say will reflect that. And I had to really ponder about lament. And that was interesting because it was really an important part of this General Assembly. As one organizer said, we didn't have to go to the issues. The country brought the issues to us with COVID-19 and the race riots blowing up. And here's what I learned about Baltimore. Baltimore offered the experience of racism. I found that the Port of Baltimore was created for the tobacco trade in about 1706 by colonizers who defeated the Susquehanna Indians, moved them off the land so this port could be created. About 50 years later, Baltimore had established its public market system. Currently, it's one of the oldest operating markets today in the U.S. The Lexington Market, which part of it is called, was the center for slave trade. COVID-19 offered lament of the devastating disruption of lives of our families, communities, countries, world, was something we can only see through a microscope. We lament that which has been taken away and have to look for hope in how life will return to a different normal. We have issues to work on for a long time. I have to start off with technology. I have the utmost respect for science, IT support persons, how quickly the General Assembly pulled together this multi-hundred person meeting and made it an experience that happened. It was Zoom, it was Biz, it was YouTube. They do have a definite place in connecting to people. About how many people attended this meeting? Just from the voting numbers, I would say that any given time there were between 500 and 600 people on these Zoom conference calls. And that has a lot of respect in my mind for our internet infrastructure, our information technology, and our support people who could make this happen. With that said, I have to tell you, this online was exhausting. It was 4-hour sessions, a 1-hour break, and then back. I experienced brain fatigue, I lost interest, I became numb to the words, the talking. This type of meeting was uncomfortable for me. And yet, General Assembly was possible because of this format. And I have to give kudos and valiant effort stars to the General Assembly for attempting to take on this huge project. The General Assembly business. There were many reports from committees. I did not have the privilege of participating in a committee because they were not part of the General Assembly this year due to the remoteness. There was much discussion. It was a very democratic process, and I want to remind you that the Presbyterian Church operates on rule by the elders, so it was us who brought the issues. Highly advanced Robert Rules of Order. There were recommendations, issues of concern. I counted 183 items on the docket, and these ranged from confirmations, approvals, reports, amendments, nominations, questions, debate, voting. As far as the items that came up, I've selected several to tell you about because they follow the theme of lament to hope, and I thought they were interesting, and I hoped you might find them somewhat interesting too. And I wonder if these topics will give us an opportunity for further discussion. The statement on church at this moment in history. And what the purpose of that was is what is happening right now in our nation and world, and how do we as the Presbyterian Church and how do we as Presbyterians respond? This was one of the statements, the sin of racism and a call to action. And I want to emphasize to you the wording was not urge to action, it was call to action. Here was the statement, dismantling and healing systemic structural institution of racism. Our country's most important institutions were built to sustain white privilege, even if unwilling, at the expense of others. Our silence is our failing to act. This was one of the first reports that I paid attention to, and it set the tone. Another item, another report that came through that I thought was of particular interest to our young people, and Cassie and Eric, I'm looking at you and your parents. It was a list of approved schools, colleges, and universities from the Presbyterian Mission Board. And what these schools indicate is a historic commitment to reformed values through education. And those values are faith, truth, learning, and I see you too, service, community, character, dignity, and worth of each person. Next year, the General Assembly will add additional criteria to be used. And there are 4 schools right here in our Intermountain area that fit that category. Of course, the College of Idaho in Colville, Idaho, Whitworth, Spokane, Washington, Westminster, Salt Lake City, Utah, and the Rocky Mountain College in Billings, Montana. Another report that I'm choosing was from the Investment and Loan Program, and it was Racial Equity Advocacy Report from the 2018 General Assembly, who were commissioned to learn about racial justice. And this group directed the agencies of the Presbyterian Church to begin each meeting with the acknowledgement of the indigenous peoples on whose land they were meeting. And as I mentioned before, Baltimore was inhabited by First Peoples since 10 BC. And later, the Susquehanna were removed, eliminated, decimated for their waterfront property. The committee looked at issues really close up because they traveled. They went to Charleston, South Carolina to take a tour of the Slavery to Freedom Trail. They went to North Dakota to look at indigenous issues at Standing Rock. And they went to the southern border with Mexico in El Paso, Texas. And out of this came the 2020 recommendations, and this is just one place mission dollars could be going. They're recommending that a mission co-worker be placed at the South Texas border, collaborate with the Hope Border Institute, establish a network of immigration lawyers, recognize the lack of installed pastors of peoples of color congregations, support immigrant fellowships. As I listened to the input, the testimony, the questions from other participants, they were usually identified by their presbytery, and most were geographic, so I had a pretty good idea. They're from north, east, south, west. And I'm from Kendall, and I'm thinking, where is Kendall? I even looked it up on a map, and Kendall is a who. There is no Kendall, Idaho. It's a who. Reverend Henry Kimball served as General Secretary of the Permanent Committee on Home Mission from 1863 to 1870. And what's really significant about him is this is the time of westward expansion, and under him, 3,000 Presbyterian congregations were established. He He also empowered the women's mission groups to have more autonomy and to be more independent on their own with their funding and their decision making. And under him, the Indian schools became a feature. Now, the women's mission projects at this time were focused on establishing schools in the Wild West for peoples who were not churched, not served by a church. And so this is where the concept of Indian schools comes in, where indigenous children were boarded and educated according to the European American standards. Wealthy Presbyterian Easterners could send financial support for a specific child, and in turn they could name that child. So in some cases, a child would be renamed Abraham Lincoln. There was one child named Lafayette Park. Another report was the Mission Committee Native American Coordinating Council report. And these advocacy issues had to do with water rights, missing and murdered indigenous women, the boarding school era, the history, the intergenerational trauma, even discussing the doctrine of discovery and how we handle Christopher Columbus, Native American ministry, health concerns, the stereotypes, mascots, and other mythology about Native Americans, and environment and land issues. There was much discussion about postponing this report for another year's consideration when people could meet in person. But overwhelmingly, the vote on this was these issues were too important and had been left undiscussed for too long. There were reports on the disinvestment of fossil fuels, per capita income is down. Where is the money going to come from? It's not going to come from mission. It will come from administrative travel. It's a report on the effectiveness of non-military collaborative approaches to conflict resolution. Israel, Palestine, Republic of Congo. And so now the worship part of this. I had 3 very different experiences with worship, none of which included the 900 people in one room. First one was this remote, collective silence of 8 minutes, 46 seconds. This was profoundly, heartbreakingly sad for me. A time to reflect about personally how I might have been off track, how I had inadvertently or unwillingly had my eyes closed and my voice silent. How our society has not addressed our institutional inequity and how we might have contributed to others' lack of dignity and equality, and how we must learn to do things differently. Another worship highlight was the music. And this music came in little tiny moments. It was the pause, maybe when people were voting, and there was beautiful music. The opening ceremony had beautiful music. The close ceremony had music. YouTube services that I attended in the Baltimore congregations featured music. Music was the hope, and I appreciated every note. Another worship service that just caught my eye was a call and a response. And it was part of a bigger ceremony. It was a graceful flow. It was a give and a take and a receive. The call was in English. The response, English, Spanish, Korean. And to me, it was our humanity, our love of God, our wantingness to follow Jesus' teachings speaks a universal language. Now, the General Assembly experience. As Presbyterians, Presbyterians. This is who I saw we are from how I attended this conference. We're dedicated. We're in the business of advocacy of people. We're restless people. We want to get things done. We have a moral imperative to accept the call to action for showing God's love in the world. We have some patience. We're focused on mission. We're engaged. We're devoted. We emphasize service to others. We're responsible. We're determined. We have courage. And we have hope. And this is us at the First Presbyterian Church. There are reoccurring quotes from different speakers, different contexts, different specifics, different topics. These quotes tie together the General Assembly for me. Church is called to dismantle oppressive structures. God desires justice. Our church must accept responsibility, give direction, offer training, support, and find ways to replace what no longer works and transform ourselves. We seek racial justice and reconciliation. This is the time of significant transition. We don't know the way, how to engage, or have the answers, but we open our doors and we open our minds. Pain, suffering, and long-time oppression is central to the work proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ. Silence is the failure to act. We must use our imagination to create a more inclusive world. The church is not failing, it is reforming. Willingness to work to put people right, acknowledge our wrongs. Listen openly. Being committed to the task of being changed, transformed, and reformed so love can flow more freely and deeply. Love one another, have hope. Again, our church, has the opportunity to continue these discussions and maybe find a path where we might find our call to action. In conclusion, Emily Dickinson expressed hope like this. Hope is a thing of feathers that perches on the soul and sings the song without the words and never gives up at all. Our church office secretary, Sherry, signs off her emails with an expression of hope from 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of sound mind. Thank you.